For centuries, the image of the armored warrior dominated battlefields across the globe. From the stoic samurai of feudal Japan to the formidable knights of medieval Europe, these figures were symbols of power, courage, and technological might. Their armor, a second skin of protection, was designed to deflect blades, absorb impacts, and ensure survival in the brutal dance of war. But then, a new sound echoed across the world, a sound that would redefine warfare forever. The crack of gunpowder. The age of gunpowder, the era of the arquebus and the musket, was a great equalizer. It promised to render the most heavily armored warrior obsolete, turning gleaming steel into a death trap. And for many did. European knights, once invincible, saw their magnificent plate armor become a tragic, heavy coffin. Yet, halfway across the world, something remarkable happened. The samurai, facing the same deadly threat, adapted. Their armor, far from becoming obsolete, evolved. It seemed to defy the very laws of physics, allowing them to stand against the storm of lead that swept away their Western counterparts. This is not a tale of simple strength versus weakness, but of engineering, philosophy, and the relentless human drive to survive. We will explore a paradox, a technological riddle that saw one form of ancient armor
this small
seemingly
lead ball
triumph over the
revolutionized
bullet,
warfare.
while
It could
another
pierce the
succumbed to
finest
its
samurai
devastating
lacquer and even
power.
crack hardened
Why
European
did
steel,
samurai
forever
armor,
changing the
in
nature
many
of battle?
aspects an older concept, prove more resilient to early firearms than the pinnacle of European plate armor? The answer lies in a fundamental difference in design, a divergence in understanding how to protect the human body from kinetic energy. To understand this, we must first journey to Japan, to a time when the introduction of firearms, brought by Portuguese traders in the mid-16th century, sent shockwaves through a society steeped in tradition. The Sengoku period, a century of relentless civil war, was already a crucible of innovation. But the arquebus, the Tanegashima as it became known, was a game-changer. It forced a rapid re-evaluation of every aspect of warfare, including armor. Imagine the chaos, the thunderous roar of massed firearms, the sight of comrades falling, not from a sword blow, but from an unseen force. The traditional samurai armor, while effective against arrows and blades, was suddenly vulnerable. But instead of abandoning their protective gear, Japanese armorers embarked on a path of radical adaptation. Our story begins with men like Hattori, a master armorer whose hands had shaped steel and leather for generations. He understood the rhythm of battle, the clang of sword on steel, the whisper of an arrow. But the Tanegashima, that was a different beast entirely. Hattori, the old ways, they served us well. A blade, an arrow, they seek to pierce. Our armor, it was made to turn them aside, to guide them away from the flesh. But this new weapon, it does not seek to pierce. It seeks to crush, to shatter. Hattori, like many of his contemporaries, faced a profound challenge. How do you protect a warrior from a projectile that carries such immense kinetic energy? The European solution, as we will see, was to make armor thicker, heavier, more rigid. But the Japanese approach, born from centuries of experience with layered construction, took a different path. Japanese armor, known as lamellar or cuirass armor, was inherently different from its European plate counterpart. It wasn't a single rigid shell. Instead, it was a complex tapestry of small, overlapping plates, often made of steel or hardened leather, meticulously laced together with silk or leather cords. Each plate was then lacquered, not just for aesthetics, but for weatherproofing and to add another layer of resilience. This multi-layered construction was fundamental. Think of it like a modern bulletproof vest. A bullet strikes the outer layer and, instead of being rigidly stuck, its energy is dissipated. The impact is spread across multiple plates, each one absorbing a fraction of the force, each one flexing and yielding slightly. The silk lacing, far from being a weakness, was a crucial component. It allowed the armor to move, to breathe, to absorb. Hattori, the silk, it is not merely to hold the plates. It is to bind them, yes, but also to allow them to dance. To give way, just so. To share the burden. A single plate, it would break. But many plates, bound by silk, they become a shield that breathes. This inherent flexibility was a profound advantage against the blunt force trauma of a musket ball. When a bullet struck a samurai's breastplate, the outer lacquered steel plate might dent, but the energy would then be transferred to the layers beneath: more steel, hardened leather, and finally, thick silk padding. Each layer would absorb part of the impact, spreading the force over a wider area.
The modern
Much like
spall
the modern
liner and the
concept
quilted
of a
lining
spall
of the
liner
samurai
in contemporary
share a
body
common
armor.
principle.
The energy
Absorbing
of the bullet,
kinetic energy
instead of
to
being
protect the
concentrated
wearer.
at a single point, was diffused. The armor would flex inwards, creating a temporary, localized depression, but crucially, it would not shatter. The warrior might still feel a powerful blow, a bone-jarring impact, but the projectile itself would be stopped, its lethal energy absorbed and distributed. The result was a deep bruise, perhaps a broken rib, but often survival. The armorers of Japan, like Hattori, were not just craftsmen, they were engineers. They understood, perhaps intuitively, the principles of energy transfer and dissipation. They didn't seek to create an impenetrable wall, but a resilient, dynamic shield. And their ultimate test was a terrifying one: the mark of proof. It's a historical fact that samurai, before purchasing a new suit of armor, would often test it with live ammunition. They would fire an arquebus at the breastplate from a short distance. A successful test wasn't one where the bullet bounced off without a trace. No, a successful test was one where the bullet left a clear,
This is not
deep
from a
dent,
sword.
but did
This
not
is from a
penetrate.
musket ball
Hattori,
fired
the
at
mark,
close
it
range.
is not a flaw. It is a promise. A promise that the armor has done its work, that it has taken the blow, so the warrior does not. It is a mark
The
of
mosa
quality,
on the
a
cuirass is not a
testament to its
weakness,
strength.
but a badge of
This
honor.
mark,
A
this
clear mark
masa,
of
as it was
quality
called,
and successful
became
impact
the seal of
absorption in the
quality.
heat of battle.
It demonstrated that the armor had absorbed the energy of the bullet, that it had yielded without breaking, protecting the wearer. It was a brutal, yet effective, quality control measure, and it speaks volumes about the confidence samurai had in their armor's ability to withstand firearms. They understood that a rigid, unyielding surface, while seemingly strong, could be catastrophic. The samurai's armor was not just a shield, it was an extension of their philosophy: adaptability, resilience, and a deep understanding of materials. It allowed them to face the terrifying new reality of gunpowder warfare, not with despair, but with a renewed sense of purpose. They continued to ride, to fight, to lead, even as the world around them changed irrevocably. Their armor, a testament to ingenious engineering, allowed them to survive the initial shock of the bullet, buying them time to adapt their tactics and, finally, to integrate firearms into their own military structure. Meanwhile, in Japan, as armor adapted, in Europe, history took a different turn. The continent, birthplace of plate armor, had reached the pinnacle of metallurgy and the art of armored warfare. Knights in their gleaming armor were the personification of chivalry, honor, and military power. Their armor, masterpieces of engineering and art, were designed to be impenetrable. Since the 14th century, European plate armor evolved into an almost complete shell of tempered steel, covering the warrior from head to toe. Each piece was forged and shaped to fit perfectly, allowing surprising mobility for its weight. It was a formidable defense against swords, spears, axes, and arrows. A fully armored knight was, to all intents and purposes, a human tank capable of withstanding the fiercest blows and crushing enemy infantry. But this strength was also its greatest weakness against the new threat. The philosophy behind plate armor was rigidity. The idea was that steel, being so hard, simply would not allow penetration. The energy of a blow would be absorbed by the mass of the metal and dissipated by its stiffness. Against impact and cutting weapons, this worked brilliantly. The steel deflected the blade, and the force was distributed over a larger area, protecting the body underneath. Then the arquebus arrived. Brought to Europe in the late 15th century, it began to appear on battlefields in greater numbers in the early 16th century. The Battle of Pavia, in 1525, in Italy, is often cited as a turning point, a massacre that sealed the fate of heavy cavalry. It is here that we find Jean-Pierre, a French knight. He was the personification of pride and tradition. His armor, polished to a shine, was a family heirloom,
This
a
armor,
symbol of
this
his
emblem,
status and his
it represents
unwavering
more than
faith
just
in the
steel.
superiority of
It
French
represents
cavalry.
duty, honor,
For
and the
Jean-Pierre,
heart of a knight.
armor was not just protection,
honor of the
it was his
Fleur de Lis,
identity. Jean-Pierre,
stand.
this armor, it is more than steel. It is the history of my ancestors, the honor of my house. No blade, no arrow, can penetrate its glory. It makes me invincible.
For France!
Jean-Pierre and his
Charge!
fellow knights marched into battle with their usual confidence. They had faced countless enemies, and their armor had always protected them. The new muskets, they were noisy, yes, and caused unpleasant wounds, but surely they could not overcome the engineering of centuries of European master armors. The problem was that a musket ball did not work like a blade or an arrow. It did not try to cut or pierce with a sharp point. Instead, it was a heavy lead projectile, fired with tremendous force. When this ball struck a rigid steel plate, two terrible things could happen. First, the spalling effect. The steel of the armor, though strong, was not indestructible. Under the concentrated, high-velocity impact of a musket ball, the plate might not be completely penetrated, but it could crack or fragment. Small pieces of metal, or even fragments of the bullet itself, could be propelled into the knight's body, creating horrific and often fatal internal wounds. It was not the bullet itself that killed, but the shrapnel from the knight's own defense. Second, and perhaps even more insidious, was the transfer of energy. Even if the bullet did not penetrate and the armor did not shatter, the kinetic energy of the projectile still had to go somewhere. In rigid plate armor, this energy was transmitted directly to the knight's body. It was like being hit by a blacksmith's hammer. The impact could break bones, cause severe internal bleeding, concussions, or damage vital organs, even without a single visible perforation in the armor. The knight might appear outwardly intact, but inside, his body was devastated.
God,
Jean-Pierre,
please,
what is this?
make it stop!
I feel as if a
Hold on,
giant has
Jean-Pierre,
struck me
we're
with
here.
an iron fist.
No!
My vision,
Too late.
it is blurred.
Help me!
There is no blood,
Please.
but the pain
He's
is
gone.
unbearable.
Not yet!
Jean-Pierre's
Not yet.
armor, designed
Look.
to be a fortress, became a resonance chamber for the bullet's energy. Instead of dissipating the impact, it concentrated it, turning the knight into a fixed target for the brutal force of the projectile. What was once an advantage, rigidity and solidity, was now a curse. The Battle of Pavia was a grim testament to this new reality. French knights, including many like Jean-Pierre, advanced with their usual bravery, but were met by volleys of arquebuses and muskets. What followed was not a duel of honor, but a slaughter. The armor that should have protected them, instead, trapped them, making them easy and vulnerable targets. The sight of knights falling, not from sword blows, but from an invisible force that knocked them from their horses, must have been terrifying. Their armor, once symbols of power, were now steel coffins, too heavy to allow a quick escape, too rigid to absorb the shock, and dangerously prone to shattering against their own bodies. Europe, with its tradition of plate armor, failed to adapt quickly to this new threat. The initial response was simply to make the armor thicker, which made it even heavier and less practical. Eventually, plate armor was abandoned for infantry and reduced to breastplates and helmets for cavalry, which also became less relevant. The era of the armored knight, like Jean-Pierre, was coming to an end. The difference between Hattori and Jean-Pierre, between Japanese and European armor, was not a question of who was generally more technologically advanced. It was a question of design philosophy. One sought energy dissipation through flexibility and layers. The other sought energy negation through rigidity and mass. Against the bullet, the former proved to be the more effective. The story of Hattori and Jean-Pierre, though they never met, is the story of two warrior cultures facing the same existential challenge. Both were masters of their crafts, both dedicated to the protection of their warriors. But their approaches, shaped by centuries of tradition and available materials, led to dramatically different outcomes when confronted with gunpowder. Japanese armor, with its lamellar construction, was inherently composite.
While separated by
like
centuries, both the modern soldier and the ancient samurai relied on multi-layered protection to ensure survival on the
the
battlefield.
energy of a projectile. Steel, leather, lacquer, and silk worked together. When a bullet struck, the outer steel layer might dent, but the energy was then transferred to the leather and silk underneath. These softer, more flexible materials absorb the shock, spreading it over a larger area and slowing the projectile. Silk, in particular, with its strong, interwoven fibers, was excellent at containing the impact and preventing penetration. The result was a powerful blow, but rarely fatal, allowing the samurai to continue fighting. European armor, on the other hand, was a steel monoblock. Its strength lay in its rigidity and thickness. Against a sword, this rigidity was a virtue, as the blade simply slid off or was repelled. But against a musket ball, this same rigidity became a fatal flaw. The energy of the projectile, instead of being dissipated, was concentrated. If the bullet did not penetrate, the impact would still be transmitted directly to the knight's body, causing what we now call blunt force trauma.
As you can see, the impact caused severe blunt force trauma.
And the knight could be knocked out or killed without the armor being visibly perforated. Furthermore, European plate armor, though incredibly strong, was susceptible to the spalling effect. Steel, under the high-velocity impact of a bullet, could crack and send dangerous fragments into the knight's body. It was a cruel irony. The protection itself became a weapon against the wearer. The Japanese mark of proof perfectly illustrates this fundamental difference. The acceptance of a dent, a deformation in the armor, as a sign of success, shows an intuitive understanding
as the
of
musket
energy
ball strikes
dissipation.
the layered Seine armor,
The
the
armor
impact
did
zone
not
deforms.
need to be
The ingenious
impenetrable.
design allows
It
the armor
needed
to
to
yield,
absorb the
dissipating
blow
the energy
and
and
protect
ensuring the
body.
body is protected.
The dent was proof that the armor had done its job, sacrificing its form to preserve the warrior's life. In Europe, the idea of armor dented by a bullet would have been seen as a failure. The perfection of the surface, the absence of marks, was the ideal. But this pursuit of visual perfection and absolute rigidity proved ineffective against the new technology. Adaptability also played a crucial role. The lamellar structure of samurai armor allowed for easier modification. Individual plates could be replaced, and new lamination and surface treatment techniques could be incorporated without completely redesigning the armor. Japanese armorers experimented with different plate thicknesses, with the inclusion of larger and more robust plates in vital areas, and with the use of more impact-resistant materials. They were not afraid to change what worked, if the new challenge demanded it. In Europe, plate armor was a highly specialized form of art and engineering, but also more rigid in its evolution. The manufacture of a complete suit of plate armor required a complex and time-consuming process, and changes were slow. The initial response to gunpowder was simply to increase the thickness of the steel, which made the armor heavier and less practical, without solving the fundamental problem of energy transfer or spalling. The fate of these two types of armor, and the warriors who wore them, reflects not only technological but also cultural differences. In Japan, adaptability and resilience were central values, and armor evolved to reflect this. The ability to yield and absorb, rather than rigidly resist, allowed the samurai warrior culture to survive and thrive longer into the age of gunpowder. In Europe, the tradition and rigidity of chivalry, along with the design philosophy of its armor, led to a more rapid decline. The armored knight, once the terror of battlefields, became a relic, superseded by infantry formations armed with muskets and pikes. Plate armor did not disappear completely, but was drastically reduced and modified, losing its central role in warfare. The story of samurai armor and European plate armor in the age of gunpowder is a powerful reminder that innovation does not always mean creating something entirely new. Sometimes, it means adapting what already exists, rethinking fundamental principles, and allowing flexibility and resilience to overcome rigidity. Hattori, the Japanese master armorer, with his skilled hands and open mind, helped ensure that the samurai could face the future. Jean-Pierre, the French knight, clinging to the glory of a fading past, found his destiny in armor that, ironically, betrayed him. The sound of the musket silenced the era of armored knights in Europe, but in Japan, it merely forced armor to whisper a new song of survival, a song of layers, of silk, and of an ancient wisdom that knew how to bend so as not to break.